You'll regret this gift, witch.
Look, I'll be straight with you from the start. Birthdays were never my thing. While guys my age throw big parties or expect their wives to plan some show, I'm fine with a quiet dinner at home. Maybe a slice of New York cheesecake if I feel fancy, then call it a night. Simple joys. None of that, look at me, it's my big day junk that half the world seems to love once they hit 35. But my wife's sister Adriana had other plans. Here's the twist. She wasn't just my sister-in-law, she was also the CEO of Titan Edge Developments, where I'd been head of project ops for 2 years. Family and work. Yeah, not my smartest move. I've had plenty of time to think about that mistake. Now, before I tell you how this blew up, you need to get one thing about Adriana. She built her whole career on never asking anyone for anything, and she wore that CEO swagger like armor. Confident grin, sharp charm, the kind that could cut glass. As for me, my resume says 15 years in urban systems and infrastructure. Sounds fancy, but really it means I'm the guy who makes sure big projects get built without falling apart, going broke, or killing someone. I see both the big picture and the tiny cracks that can ruin it. Some people call it obsessive. I call it professional paranoia. "Happy birthday, brother-in-law," she said with this smug smile that should have been a red flag the size of Texas. Her tone was too sweet, too slick, like a used car dealer swearing this ride was only driven to church on Sundays. The room went quiet, waiting for the reveal. I thought maybe whiskey or some high-end corporate gift. Instead, I pulled out a black t-shirt with the company logo on it. In bold white letters, "You're fired. Consider it my gift to you." For 3 seconds, I thought it was some sick joke. But her eyes weren't laughing. They were cold, sharp, dead serious. This wasn't a prank. It was a firing squad dressed up as a birthday gift. The room broke into this odd, uneasy laughter. You know the kind, like when someone cracks a joke at a funeral that's a little too dark, so half the people laugh and the rest act like they didn't hear it. Jim Martinez from accounting let out this fake chuckle that sounded like a car trying to start on a frozen morning. Sarah from HR buried her face in her wine glass, probably already doing the math on how many lawsuits this stunt might trigger. But the worst hit came from my wife. I turned to Marissa, expecting anger. Instead, she just smiled. Not shocked, not uneasy, a knowing smile, the kind that told me she'd been in on it all along. Here's something most people don't know about me. I've got a slow fuse when it comes to emotional hits. While others break down or blow up right away, I slip into this strange, sharp focus mode. Time feels slower, and I catch little details I'd normally miss. Like how Adriana's smirk wasn't quite reaching her eyes, suggesting she was nervous about how this was going to play out despite her confident exterior. Or how Marcus Webb from engineering department was slowly backing toward front door like he was planning escape route. But the detail that really stuck with me was way my wife was holding her wine glass. Loose, casual, like she was at the movie theater watching good guy finally get what was coming to him. I kept my composure. Years of dealing with construction crews and impossible deadlines had taught me how to stay cool when everyone's losing their minds. I folded the shirt neatly like I was working retail at the Gap, placed it back in the bag, and stood up with all casual confidence of guy who just received exactly what he was expecting for his birthday. "Thanks, Adriana. I'll remember this." Then I walked outside for air, leaving behind a room full of people who had no idea they'd just witnessed the opening act of what was about to become a very expensive lesson in corporate karma. Standing on my front porch, breathing in cool evening air, I felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Yeah, relief. Because sometimes you don't realize how toxic your situation has become until someone does you favor of showing you exit door, even if they do it with all grace of sledgehammer to face. While I was standing there being all stoic and mysterious, I was actually doing something that would make their worst nightmares look like Disney movie. I slipped phone out of pocket, casual as you please, and sent 2 quick text messages that were about to change everything. First one went to Dean. "It happened. Game time." Second went to my attorney friend, Jake. "Need to talk tonight." Cool evening air hit my face like slap of reality, and I found myself listening to muffled sounds of uncomfortable conversation filtering through windows. Someone was trying to salvage the party, making small talk about weekend plans, but you could hear tension underneath it all, like gas leak nobody wanted to acknowledge. Every major function, every critical piece of project data, every submission to city planning departments, it all required my personal digital signature to proceed. Why'd I build it that way? About a year earlier, we had this subcontractor, sleazy little weasel named Tommy Kowalski, who decided to improve electrical blueprints without telling anyone. His improvements would have turned a safe office building into a potential trap. I caught it during routine audit, but realized giving everyone unlimited access to critical data was like handing loaded guns to toddlers. So I implemented approval gates. Certain high-level project data required my personal authorization before it could be accessed or submitted. At the time, Adriana thought it was brilliant. Great thinking, she'd said. This way, we ensure quality control at every level. Turns out quality control works both ways. 2 hours later, I had 118 missed calls. The system was locked. They couldn't access anything without my credentials, and tomorrow was the deadline for submitting final plans for Morrison Creek, a $47 million municipal housing project that would make or break the company's reputation. Without my authorization, they couldn't submit blueprints. Without submissions, they'd miss the deadline and face penalties that would make lottery jackpots look like pocket change. The voicemails were pure entertainment. Started casual, "Hey buddy, having some trouble accessing files," escalated to concerned, "We need to talk immediately about this system malfunction," then desperate panic. By midnight, Adriana was calling it a misunderstanding. By 2 a.m., she was offering to double my salary plus equity options, the kind of money that could change everything about my life. But here's the thing. While they were panicking, my best friend Dean from the city's public safety department had been investigating Titan Edge. Turns out they'd been systematically falsifying safety compliance reports, backdating inspection documents, and submitting altered blueprints that didn't match what was actually being built. Grade A steel getting swapped for Grade B, fire safety features quietly disappearing from final plans, load calculations that played fast and loose with safety margins. "I think Adriana's rushing projects to inflate short-term profits," Dean told me over coffee at a 24-hour diner 2 weeks before my birthday disaster. "Maybe setting up for a buyout or major investment." He spread documents across the table like building a case for prosecution. "Look at this. Project Mercury downtown office complex. Original specs called for Grade A steel throughout. Final submission shows Grade B in non-critical areas, according to who? And that's just one project. That made way too much sense. All those flashy promises to clients, pressure to cut costs wherever possible, willingness to gamble with safety standards. All pointed to someone trying to pump up company value for big payday. Instead of going back, I started my own company, Keystone Compliance Consulting. Cities hire me to audit construction submissions before approving permits. I verify blueprints are accurate, safety features are real, materials match what's promised. It's like preventive medicine for construction projects." Dean became my first client. The city had been looking for exactly the service for years, tired of dealing with safety violations after the fact, tired of liability exposure, tired of trusting developers were being honest about submissions. My first official assignment was auditing 3 projects already in the approval pipeline. 2 were straightforward, competent developers who'd done their homework. The third made my blood run cold. It was a Titan Edge project. Oakwood Terrace, 24 units of affordable housing supposed to break ground in 2 months. I spent 3 days going through every document, every blueprint, every specification sheet. What I found was a masterclass in lying with architectural drawings. Submitted plans showed proper fire suppression systems, adequate electrical capacity, building materials meeting all safety codes. But cross-referencing documentation with actual purchase orders and contractor agreements revealed completely different reality. Fire suppression downgraded to bare minimum code requirements. Electrical systems undersized for actual load they'd carry. And building materials, Grade A steel reinforcement and Grade C steel that look similar are not the same thing, despite what Titan Edge's purchasing department seemed to believe. My report was 18 pages of documented safety violations, falsified documents, and recommendations that basically said, "Do not approve this death trap under any circumstances." The fallout was immediate and spectacular. City not only rejected permit application, but launched formal investigation into other pending projects. State Contractor Licensing Board opened inquiry. 3 news outlets picked up story, turning Adriana's company into poster child for construction industry corruption. Within 6 months, I was handling verification for 12 municipalities across 3 counties. My team had grown from just me and laptop to 6 full-time auditors with enough work to keep us busy until next ice age. We'd flagged safety violations in 37 different projects, prevented genuinely catastrophic building failures, and earned reputation developers either loved or absolutely despised, depending on whether they were building death traps or actual safe structures. Titan Edge fell squarely into absolutely despised category. Plot twist. 6 months later, Titan Edge's board hired me to fix their compliance systems. Harold Morrison, board chairman with enough political connections to get parking tickets dismissed, sent formal consultation request offering triple my usual rate, plus complete independence and authority. The meeting was surreal, returning to scene of the crime. Conference room packed with entire executive leadership plus expensive suit lawyers. Adriana looked nothing like confident CEO for my birthday disaster. She looked tired, stressed, defeated. When I walked in, she said quietly, "Thank you for coming. I know this is probably the last place you want to be." Then, something unexpected happened. She interrupted Morrison's prepared PR speech about corporate responsibility. "Cut the BS, Harold. He knows exactly what we've been doing and why we're here." She looked at me directly. "We screwed up badly, and people could have gotten hurt because of decisions I made. I need help fixing this, and you're the only person I trust to do it right." Trust. The word hung between us like smoke from house fire. But looking at Adriana stripped of all CEO swagger, I realized she wasn't trying to manipulate me back into fold. She was just desperate, and desperation, unlike arrogance, is something you can actually work with. My terms. Keystone becomes exclusive compliance partner with complete authority to override any design, reject any material choice, shut down any project that doesn't meet safety standards. Plus, one more condition. Adriana personally completes same training program I give junior compliance officers. All of it. Every module, every test, every practical exercise. Bob Hendricks made choking sound that might have been laughter or horror. Harold Morrison looked like he'd watched someone propose at funeral, but Adriana stared at me for 10 seconds, calculating whether her pride was worth more than company survival. "When do I start?" she asked. That's how I found myself in completely surreal position of being Adriana's compliance instructor, teaching former sister-in-law how to follow same safety regulations she'd been systematically ignoring for years. She actually took it seriously. First week I expected pushback, eye-rolling, passive-aggressive comments about theoretical knowledge not applying to real world. Instead, Adriana showed up every day with notebooks, asked detailed questions, actually seemed to pay attention when I explained why certain standards existed. "So fire suppression system isn't just about meeting minimum code requirements," she said during week 2. "It's about ensuring if something goes wrong, people have enough time to get out safely." "Exactly," I said, realizing I was actually enjoying this. Code minimums are just that, minimums. They're absolute least you can do and still call yourself responsible builder, but responsible builders aim higher. The transformation was gradual, but undeniable. Projects that would have been rubber stamped 6 months ago were getting thorough reviews. Materials upgraded to meet actual safety standards rather than minimum legal requirements. Timelines extended for proper inspections. Adriana was learning, really learning, not just going through motions. Real test came month 3 when longtime contractor Marchetti Construction, sleazy outfit specializing in cutting corners and inflating bills, submitted plans for shopping center that looked legitimate but was full of subtle safety compromises that had been Adriana's trademark. Old Adriana would have approved without second thought. New Adriana spent 2 hours with my team, identified 7 major violations, then personally called Vincent Marchetti to explain why his company would no longer work on Titan Edge projects. "You can't be serious," Marchetti said loud enough I could hear through speakerphone. "We've been doing business 5 years. You know how the game works." "The game has changed," Adriana replied, calm but firm. "If you want to work with us again, submit plans that actually meet safety standards. Real standards, not creative interpretations." 3 other contractors dropped bids rather than deal with new compliance requirements. But contractors who stayed, ones willing to actually build things properly, were delivering better work than Titan Edge had ever seen. The partnership worked. Titan Edge became company that could actually be trusted with people's safety. Client satisfaction soared, insurance costs dropped. Building inspectors who used to approach their projects like haunted houses were actually complimenting attention to detail. And maybe most surprisingly, Adriana seemed happier. Like she'd been carrying massive weight knowing she was cutting corners and compromising safety, and now could finally build things right and sleep at night. Don't get me wrong, she was still a woman who'd humiliated me in front of colleagues. But watching her grind through compliance training, seeing her take responsibility instead of blaming others, observing her actually care about whether buildings would keep people safe, it was like watching someone remember who they used to be, before corporate pressure turned them into someone they didn't recognize. My divorce from Marissa was finalized 3 months earlier. Turns out when your wife sides with someone who publicly destroys your career, it's pretty clear sign marriage was over anyway. Settlement was fair, lawyers didn't completely bankrupt me, and for first time in years I was living in space that felt like home rather than staging area for family drama. On 1 year anniversary of my birthday disaster, I got another package. Same black t-shirt, same company logo, different message in bold white letters. Thank you for saving the company. No card, no lengthy explanation, just simple acknowledgement wrapped in same format that started this whole journey. The truth was, her little birthday surprise had backfired in ways she never could have imagined. She'd tried to humiliate me, strip away dignity, show everyone who had real power. Instead, she'd given me push I needed to build something bigger and better than anything I could have accomplished working for someone else. Keystone Compliance was mine, my vision, standards, team, reputation. Nobody could take it away with cute stunts or corporate restructuring or family arguments. I'd built something that mattered, making worlds safer one compliance review at a time. Now I have business handling verification for 23 municipalities with 12 employees who depend on me not screwing up their paychecks. Making more money than ever, sleeping knowing my work keeps people safe. Trade publications write articles about our innovative approach. I speak at industry conferences about independent oversight improving construction safety. The construction industry was actually getting safer because of what we were doing, and that felt better than any revenge fantasy I could have cooked up. I keep both t-shirts in my desk drawer, two completely different messages, marking beginning and transformation of what turned out to be best year of my professional life. Sometimes, worst thing that happens teaches you that you can actually fly. Sometimes getting pushed off cliff shows you capabilities you never knew existed. And sometimes person who tries to destroy your career gives you motivation to build something better than you ever thought possible. That was real gift, not shirt, not acknowledgement, not even apology that never quite got spoken. Real gift was discovering I didn't need anyone else's permission to build career I wanted.
She cheated on me on this couch, and it destroyed our marriage!
I'd been looking forward to my golf trip for months, but that morning Jake called to say his kid had the flu and we'd have to cancel. I was let down, but I thought I could use the time to surprise my wife Marissa with a date night since she wasn't expecting me back until Sunday. When I pulled into the drive Friday night, I saw Tasha's black SUV and Brianna's Honda parked all over the place. They'd already been drinking. Marissa was having one of her wine nights with the girls. Perfect. I could surprise them, grab a beer, and hang out. Instead of going in the front, I walked around back to the deck. I smelled citronella candles and heard their loud laughter. They were drunk, wine glasses clinking, Tasha's loud laugh cutting through. I was about 20 feet away when I heard my name. I froze. Then Marissa's voice rang clear. He's too dumb to know I've been cheating with his best friend for years. The words hit me like a punch. I stepped back, my bag sliding off my shoulder. Her friends burst out laughing like it was the best joke. Tasha yelled, "Girl, you are terrible!" But she was laughing too. They all knew. Years, she'd said. How long had I been blind? Brianna asked, "Does Dylan ever feel guilty?" Dylan, my best friend since college, who came to my barbecues, who I stood beside at his wedding. Dylan, who knew everything about me, even how much I loved Marissa. Are you kidding? Marissa laughed. He loves the thrill. We did it on the couch last Tuesday while he was at work. The same couch where I'd napped Sunday. That crushed me harder than anything. They went on. Chicago wasn't solo. Girls' night was cover for dinners. A weekend at her sister's was really with him. I remembered that weekend. I'd missed her so much I sent flowers to her sister's place. My hands shook as they tore my marriage apart like gossip. The best part, she said, is that he actually thinks Dylan is loyal. If he only knew. That broke me. I picked up my bag and walked back to my car. Their laughter carried on, unaware their secret was gone. I drove around for 20 minutes, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Marissa's words echoed in my head again and again, each time like a punch. Then my phone buzzed with a text from her. "Miss you, baby. Having wine with the girls. Can't wait for you Sunday. Love you." The heart emoji made me sick. How could she send that after bragging about betraying me? I stopped at a 24-hour diner with a flickering neon sign. I called Marcus, my old college roommate. My voice cracked. "Marcus, I need help. Marissa's cheating with Dylan. It's been going on for years." There was silence. Then he said softly, "Jesus. Are you sure?" I heard her. She laughed about how dumb I am, how I never guessed. They joked about how I trust Dylan. "Listen," Marcus said firmly. "Do not go back there tonight. Come to my place. We'll figure this out." At his apartment, he made coffee and opened his laptop. "Tell me everything. Then we'll get you the best divorce lawyer in the state." The hardest part wasn't proof. It was pretending things were normal while I gathered it. That morning, I sat in my car 10 minutes, rehearsing what to say. I came up with a lie about the trip being cut short. When I walked in, Marissa was cooking her usual hangover breakfast, eggs too cheesy, toast a bit burnt. She looked up, and for a moment I saw panic before her bright smile. "Baby, you're home early." She rushed to kiss me. Her breath still smelled of wine, a stain on her pajama top. "I thought you weren't coming back until tomorrow." "Weather turned bad," I said smoothly. "Jake's flight was canceled, so we called it off." I kissed her back, tasting lies. "Looks like you had fun with the girls." She laughed, the same laugh I'd heard outside. "Oh my God, we got so drunk." Tasha brought that Rosa you hate, and Brianna had gossip about her neighbor's divorce. Her easy mention of divorce made my stomach twist. For the next week, I became a different person. On the surface, I was the same reliable husband I'd always been, but underneath, I was gathering evidence with methodical patience. Every time she left her phone unattended or took a shower, I was building my case against her. The text messages told the story I dreaded. Months of explicit conversations with Dylan, starting innocuous but quickly becoming graphic. Pet names I'd never heard her use, photos I wasn't supposed to see. Plans made around my work schedule, around the very fabric of our shared life. The messages went back over 2 years. That weekend, she'd said she was visiting her college roommate. She'd been with Dylan at a bed and breakfast upstate. The work conference in Chicago, where she'd claimed her company was too cheap for a +1, Dylan had been there, probably in the same room. The cruelest part was how casually they discussed me. Not with malice exactly, but with the casual dismissal you'd give to a mildly annoying pet. Dylan worried I might get suspicious about his frequent visits. Marissa assured him I was too trusting to put the pieces together. They joked about my predictable schedule, my habit of falling asleep during movies, how I always announced my plans days in advance. My reliability had become the foundation of their betrayal. Moving to our laptop, I found our joint bank account records showing charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels in cities I'd never visited with her, shopping sprees during weekends I thought she was with family. She'd been funding her affair with our money I'd earned with 60-hour work weeks. There was a charge for a couple's massage at a spa resort the same weekend she told me she was at her sister's baby shower. A wine bar bill for exactly 2 people on a Tuesday when she'd claimed to be working late. Hotel charges during a weekend I'd spent at my mother's house while Marissa had supposedly been home with the flu. Claire Monroe's law office surprised me. Warm and inviting rather than the sterile intimidation I'd expected. Claire herself was sharp and efficient, getting straight to business without false sympathy. After I told her everything, she outlined the strategy. You're going to document everything, but smart. No confrontations, no dramatic accusations. The element of surprise is your biggest advantage right now. She gave me a detailed checklist. Protect assets by transferring exactly half our joint savings to a new account. Gather all financial documentation. Change all passwords. Find a new place. To live but don't move yet. Most importantly, we want to control the narrative when this comes out. How long do I need to keep this up? Living like everything's normal while I gather evidence? As long as it takes to build an airtight case. Could be weeks, could be months. The stronger our position when we file, the quicker and cleaner the divorce will be. We want to control the narrative when this comes out. The morning of Marissa's charity gala, the event she'd been organizing for months as her chance for a promotion, I felt oddly calm. After 6 weeks of careful planning, documentation, and strategic positioning, today everything would change. She looked beautiful in her new navy dress, nervous and excited about her big night. For 3 months, she'd been organizing this fundraiser for the Children's Literacy Foundation, where she worked part-time. 200 guests, silent auction, keynote speaker. Her chance to prove herself worthy of the development director promotion she'd been coveting. "You look incredible," I told her, meaning it. "This is going to be your night." The irony of reassuring her on the day I planned to destroy her life wasn't lost on me, but I genuinely wanted her professional moment to succeed. What happened afterward was about our marriage, not her career. After she left for the venue, I opened my laptop. The nuclear file was ready. Every piece of evidence documented, cross-referenced, and verified. All that remained was pulling the trigger. The first email went to Amanda, Dylan's wife. I'd agonized over this approach. Amanda was innocent in all of this, a casualty who deserved to know the truth but didn't deserve to be blindsided. "Dear Amanda, I wish there was an easier way to tell you this, but I think you deserve to know that Dylan and my wife Marissa have been having an affair for the past 3 years. I've attached some evidence that will help you understand the scope of what's been happening. I'm sorry you have to learn about this, and I'm sorry I didn't find a way to tell you sooner." The second email went to Marissa's parents, Jim and Carol, who had welcomed me into their family with open arms and still sent birthday cards with handwritten notes about how lucky they were to have me as a son-in-law. "I am writing to let you know that I've discovered Marissa has been having an affair, and I will be filing for divorce. I wanted you to hear this from me rather than through gossip or secondhand information. I've attached some documentation that explains the situation. I hope you know how much I valued being part of your family." The third round went to key mutual friends. Not everyone, but people whose opinions mattered most in our social circle. I positioned myself as the reluctant messenger, the devastated husband who discovered something terrible and was trying to handle it with dignity. By 6 p.m., the story had spread through our entire social network like wildfire. Amanda's reply came first. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Thank you for telling me. I confronted Dylan and he confessed to everything. I can't believe this is happening." Then Jim, Marissa's father. "We're shocked and heartbroken. We had no idea. Thank you for handling this with such class. You'll always be family to us regardless of what happens between you and Marissa." As the afternoon wore on, responses multiplied, friends expressing shock and support. Dylan's panicked text messages asking if we could talk about this like adults. Marissa's sister calling to ask if the rumors she was hearing were true. The carefully constructed social media image of our perfect marriage was crumbling in real time. At 8:30, just as Marissa's gala reached its peak, I drove to the venue and parked across the street. Through the tall windows, I could see the party in full swing. Women in cocktail dresses, men in suits, champagne glasses, auction bidding. Marissa was in her element, gliding between groups with confidence, thinking her life was exactly as it appeared. I sent her a single text. "We need to talk when you get home. It's important." When she walked through our door at midnight, riding high on professional success, the divorce papers and evidence were waiting on our kitchen table. Her face went through a range of emotions: confusion, recognition, panic, then desperate calculation. "What is this?" she asked, though her voice suggested she already knew. "I think it's pretty self-explanatory," I said calmly. "I know about Dylan. I know about everything. I heard you laughing about it with your friends 6 weeks ago." She tried denial first. "I don't know what you think you heard," but the evidence was overwhelming. Text message screenshots, bank records, timeline documentation. When confronted with irrefutable proof, she crumbled. Then came desperate explanations. It didn't mean anything emotional. It was just physical excitement, an escape from our routine marriage. Dylan and she never talked about leaving their spouses permanently. "So you decided the solution was having an affair with my best friend for 3 years instead of talking to me about feeling bored?" She broke down completely, tears streaming as she realized the magnitude of what she'd lost. "I've destroyed everything good in my life for something that was never worth it." When I showed her the financial breakdown of what her post-divorce life would look like, barely scraping by without my income subsidizing her lifestyle, the calculation in her eyes was unmistakable. This wasn't really about love or regret. This was about maintaining her standard of living. She signed the papers with shaking hands while mascara streaked down her cheeks. Within hours, she'd stormed out, and my plan was in motion. The social collapse was immediate and devastating. By Sunday morning, my phone had dozens of missed calls and messages, but the radio silence from certain people told the real story. Brianna, who usually texted me memes, had gone quiet. Even Marissa's cousin Lisa had stopped interacting with any content, including both of us. The most telling silence came from Dylan. Not a single message since Amanda confronted him. According to mutual friends, he'd been a complete wreck, calling in sick to work, avoiding usual hangout spots, desperately trying to save his own marriage. Professional consequences materialized quickly. The nonprofit couldn't afford scandal, especially with conservative donors who cared about family values. Despite her gala's success, Marissa became a liability. Board members were reconsidering her promotion. Within a week, Dylan's wife had filed for divorce and moved out. Marissa had moved back with her parents. The woman who'd seemed so powerful manipulating me behind my back now seemed small and pathetic in defeat. The divorce finalized 6 months later, overwhelmingly in my favor. The infidelity evidence was so overwhelming that even in our no-fault state, the judge considered it when dividing assets. I kept the house, the better car, most of our savings. Marissa got enough money to survive about a year if careful, plus the bitter knowledge that her choices had cost her everything. But the real satisfaction didn't come from watching her fall. It came from building something better. I reclaimed our house room by room, replacing shared memories with my actual preferences. The king-size bed where she'd lain next to me while planning encounters with Dylan went to charity, replaced by a queen-size frame no one had slept in before me. I rejoined the soccer league I'd quit when Marissa complained weekend games interfered with social obligations. I reconnected with college friends, work colleagues I'd never socialized with while married, neighbors I'd only known casually. Without coordinating with a spouse's schedule, I was free to accept invitations spontaneously. Work became more engaging without the underlying tension of home life. My productivity increased, and I volunteered for projects requiring travel or extended hours, opportunities I'd turned down, thinking I had a marriage to nurture. My supervisor noticed the change and hinted at promotion possibilities. Financially, without Marissa's spending habits and lifestyle expectations, my income went much further. The house payment, which had felt burdensome when splitting expenses, was easily manageable alone. For the first time in years, I was saving significant money rather than wondering where it all went. A year later, I encountered Marissa at a hardware store. She was looking at paint swatches for her parents' garage apartment where she was living. She looked different, younger somehow, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater I didn't recognize, hair shorter than during our marriage. We made awkward small talk. She was working part-time at the library, planning to move to Oregon for a fresh start with a nonprofit position. It's entry-level, but it's honest work, and I like helping people find what they're looking for. I owe you an apology, she said suddenly. Not just for the affair, I apologized for that already, but for the way I tried to manipulate you that night at your apartment, acting like my financial situation was your responsibility to fix. She'd been in therapy, she explained, trying to understand her choices. I realized I'd gotten so used to managing your reactions, presenting information to get what I wanted, that I'd forgotten how to be honest about what I was thinking and feeling. What did you figure out? That I was scared. Scared of being ordinary, financially insecure, not being the person everyone thought I was. The affair wasn't about excitement. It was about feeling powerful and in control of something secret. When that fell apart, I tried manipulating you into fixing it because I was terrified of facing consequences alone. She seemed genuinely changed, taking responsibility rather than manipulating. I hope you find someone who deserves you, she said as we parted. I hope you find peace, I replied, meaning it completely. Driving home, I realized seeing Marissa hadn't reopened wounds or stirred complicated feelings. It confirmed what I'd learned over the past year. The best revenge wasn't destroying her, but building something better in the space her betrayal had created. The life I'd built wasn't just good compared to the deception I'd been living. It was good in its own right, honest, straightforward, built on choices I'd made freely rather than compromises extracted through manipulation. That evening, I finished home repairs and made dinner for one without feeling lonely. Somewhere in Oregon, Marissa would start over with whatever wisdom she'd gained from losing everything she thought she wanted. And that was exactly as it should be.
You can't outrun justice, brother.
I opened my eyes after 8 months in a coma to hospital lighting that felt like ice picks stabbing my eyeballs while someone simultaneously set off fireworks behind my retinas. The first thing that hit me wasn't consciousness. It was the realization that I'd been swimming up from the deepest part of sleep for what felt like an eternity, and reality was about to crash into me like unwanted house guests. I tried to groan, but what came out sounded more like a dying walrus having an existential crisis. Classy, right? That's apparently all it took to send the nursing staff into full panic mode. Within seconds, I heard frantic squeaking of sneakers against the linoleum and a voice yelling, "Get Dr. Martinez! The coma patient in 314 is finally awake!" That's me, folks. Your friendly neighborhood vegetable who just sprouted consciousness. My body felt like it belonged in a horror movie where the mad scientist stitches together random parts and hopes for the best. Everything was wrong. My arms felt like they were filled with wet cement. My legs might as well have been tree trunks for all the sensation I had in them. And don't even get me started on the lovely collection of tubes and wires keeping me tethered to this mortal coil. I was basically a human Christmas tree, if Christmas trees came with catheter bags and heart monitors. Doctor. Martinez appeared faster than you could say malpractice lawsuit, looking like he'd stepped out of a medical drama with tired eyes and 5 o'clock shadow. He started doing that thing doctors do, shining lights in my eyes, checking reflexes, making me follow his finger like a roadside sobriety test. The whole song and dance. "Welcome back to the land of the living, mister." "Thompson," he said with genuine relief in his voice. "You've been out for quite a while, 8 months to be exact. You were in a severe car accident, multiple trauma, brain swelling, the works. We honestly weren't sure you'd wake up at all. 8 freaking months. Do you know what can happen to a person's life in 8 months? Apparently, I was about to find out. And spoiler alert, it wasn't going to be sunshine and rainbows. The doctor kept talking about my injuries, recovery prospects, physical therapy, blah, blah, blah. But here's the thing about nearly dying. It gives you clarity about what really matters. And what mattered to me in that moment wasn't my busted body or scrambled brains. It was the complete and total absence of the one person who should have been sitting beside my bed, holding my hand, crying tears of joy that I'd finally opened my eyes. So I interrupted Dr. Martinez mid-sentence about motor function recovery and asked the question burning a hole through my chest, "Where's my wife?" The silence that followed was so thick you could have cut it with a scalpel. The doctor's face went through more expressions than a mime having a seizure while he glanced at the nurse, who suddenly found the floor tiles absolutely fascinating. Then he cleared his throat. You know that sound people make when they're about to deliver news that's going to rearrange your entire world. "Mr. Thompson," he said, using that gentle voice reserved for breaking bad news and explaining terminal diagnoses. "Perhaps we should focus on your recovery first. There will be time to discuss other matters." "Doc," I said, my voice coming out like sandpaper scraping against concrete. "I've been unconscious for 8 months. I think I've done enough focusing on recovery." "Where's my wife?" Another glance between the medical professionals. More throat clearing. "Finally, doctor." Martinez sat down in the chair beside my bed, never a good sign when the doctor sits down, and delivered the news that made my near-death experience look like a Disney vacation. "Your wife Clara remarried 2 months ago to your brother Daniel. They had to make some difficult financial decisions while you were incapacitated. The medical bills, the house payments, they sold your home and have moved in together. Now I want you to imagine for a second what it feels like to survive a car crash that should have eliminated you, spend 8 months in a coma, wake up expecting, to see your loving wife's face, and instead get told that she's shacked up with your own flesh and blood while your body was still warm in the hospital bed. It's like winning the lottery and finding out the ticket was counterfeit. Except the lottery was your entire life, and the counterfeit ticket was your faith in humanity. Instead of exploding with rage, I started laughing. Not the happy kind of laughter, the kind that makes nurses reach for sedatives and doctors start questioning your mental stability. Because honestly, the sheer audacity of it all was almost impressive. My wife and brother had managed to screw me over so thoroughly that it was practically an art form. "Is there anything else?" I asked, wiping tears from my eyes. "Any other delightful surprises from my extended nap? Did they donate my organs while I was under, sell my car, Maybe throw a block party to celebrate their wedding. The next morning, my dear brother Daniel decided to grace me with his presence. The irony of him walking through that door wasn't lost on me. Here was the guy who used to steal my lunch money in middle school, and apparently he'd graduated to stealing my entire life. Daniel looked good, too good. Like I'd been living stress-free while my brother was potentially dying good. His hair was perfectly styled, he was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my last car payment, and he had this weird tan that screamed, "I've been taking vacations while you were hooked up to life support." The son of a witch was practically glowing with health and prosperity. "Hey there, Sleeping Beauty," he said, pulling up a chair like we were old buddies catching up over beers. "Good to see you finally decided to join the land of the living. We were starting to wonder if you'd ever wake up. We." That little word hit me like a slap across the face. We as in him and my wife. We as in the happy couple who'd been playing house while I was playing corpse. "Yeah, well, here I am," I said, trying to keep my voice as neutral as possible. "Surprised you're not on your honeymoon or something." Daniel had the audacity to chuckle. Actually, chuckle. Like this whole situation was some kind of amusing mix-up instead of a complete betrayal of everything decent in the world. "Already been and back, bro. Bermuda was incredible. Clara sends her regards, by the way. She's having a hard time with all this." "Oh, she's having a hard time. My heart just broke for her, really." Here I was thinking that marrying your comatose husband's brother might be emotionally challenging. "I'm sure she is," I said. Must be tough explaining to people how she ended up married to her brother-in-law while her first husband was still breathing. Daniel shifted uncomfortably. First time since walking in, he looked anything but confident. "Look, man, I know how this looks, but you have to understand, we didn't have a choice. The medical bills were piling up like nobody's business. Your insurance covered some of it, but not nearly enough. The house payments were behind, the credit cards were maxed out, and frankly, we didn't know if you were ever going to wake up." There it was. The justification. The reasonable explanation for why two adults decided that the best solution to financial pressure was to get married and play house, while the guy footing the bills was unconscious. "So, naturally, the obvious solution was for you to marry my wife and sell my house," I said, "because that's definitely what any reasonable person would do in that situation." We had to be practical, man. Clara was devastated, absolutely destroyed. She couldn't handle the stress of managing everything alone. I stepped in to help, and one thing led to another. We found comfort in each other during a really difficult time. Comfort. That's what he was calling it. I had to admire the euphemism. It was certainly more delicate than saying they'd been screwing around while I was fighting for my life. "And the house?" I asked, because I was clearly a glutton for punishment. Daniel's expression brightened like he was excited to share more wonderful news. "We got a great price for it, actually. Way more than we expected in this market. The buyers were desperate, cash offer, closed in 3 weeks. It was like a miracle. A miracle. My house, the house I'd saved for, the house I'd put every penny of my VA loan into, the house where Clara and I had planned to grow old together. Being sold while I was unconscious was a miracle." "And where exactly did this miraculous windfall go?" I asked, though I was pretty sure I already knew the answer. "Well, first, we paid off all the medical debt. That was the priority, obviously. Your hospital bills were astronomical, man. Then we cleared the credit cards, caught up on all the late payments, that kind of thing. The rest went into a joint account for living expenses and, setting up our new life together. Our new life together. There it was, laid out in black and white. They'd taken my money, sold my house, paid my bills, and used whatever was left to fund their little love nest. It was efficient, completely soulless, and morally bankrupt, but efficient. But here's what Daniel didn't understand about me, what he'd never understood even when we were kids. I've always been a planner while he was the one who acted on impulse, who charmed his way out of trouble and relied on his natural charisma to get what he wanted. I was the one who thought things through, who considered consequences, who planned for contingencies, who always had a backup plan for my backup plan. 6 months before my accident, I'd noticed things were off. Clara's phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room. Oh, that was just Sarah from work. Small withdrawals from our joint checking account. I needed cash for lunch. Forgot to tell you I stopped at the grocery store. Daniel. Showing up more often with excuses about being in the neighborhood. The real wake-up call came when I found Daniel's truck in my driveway at 9 p.m., with our living room lights dimmed like some romantic movie set. When I went inside, they were sitting on opposite ends of the couch watching TV, drinking wine. Nothing inappropriate I could point to, but the energy was wrong. It felt like walking into a play where actors had just remembered their lines. That night, I had a long conversation with myself about either continuing to pretend everything was fine or starting to protect myself from what looked like inevitable disaster. I chose protection. The next morning, I called James Morrison and set up a meeting. I told him I wanted to review my financial situation and make sure all legal documents were up to date. Smart thinking, he said. Better to be prepared and not need it than the other way around. James helped me set up a separate bank account at a different bank that only I could access. Nothing dramatic that would show up on regular statements. Just somewhere I could move small amounts Clara wouldn't miss. I opened a safe deposit box and started moving important documents. Copies of financial records, investment statements, insurance policies. The house was tricky since we'd bought it with my VA loan, meaning the mortgage was in my name, but Clara was on the deed as my spouse. James researched the legal implications and found interesting protections in place for VA loans that Clara might not be aware of, protections that could become important if someone tried selling without proper authorization. I also made changes to my will and power of attorney documents. Nothing that would raise red flags if Clara saw them, but enough to ensure that if something happened, people making decisions about my care and finances would be people I actually trusted. The whole process took 2 months of gradual preparation. Small money movements, documents copied during lunch breaks, meetings with James when Clara wouldn't notice. I was conducting a covert operation against my own life, preparing for war I hoped would never come. After Daniel left the hospital, I lay there staring at the ceiling for about an hour. The anger was controlled, focused, the kind that doesn't make you throw things, but makes you dangerous. I had Nurse Patricia give Dr. Martinez a simple note. Give this to my lawyer, James Morrison at Morrison & Associates downtown. Tell him it's from Mike Thompson and it's urgent. His number is 555-0147. That was it. No explanation, no context, just a simple request to contact my lawyer. James understood immediately. He'd been my lawyer for almost 10 years, sharp as a tack and absolutely ruthless when someone tried to screw over his clients. My message about checking specific legal documents told him exactly what had happened. Within hours, James discovered the house sale used forged power of attorney documents. The county recorder showed the property had been sold, closed, done deal. But when James called the VA loan office, they said the loan was paid off 3 weeks ago with irregularities in the paperwork. The power of attorney wasn't properly notarized for federal purposes, and they never received required veteran incapacitation verification forms. James called our bank and discovered systematic draining of joint accounts through transfers to new accounts Clara had opened. He had copies of my actual medical bills, so he knew exactly how much my care cost versus how much had been transferred out. The picture was systematic, calculated theft. They hadn't just taken advantage of my incapacitation. They'd planned it, executed it, covered tracks with forged documents and fraudulent justifications. James contacted Detective Sarah Chun at Financial Crimes, the FBI, and the VA Fraud Office. By day's end, every account was frozen, the house sale was voided, federal agents were preparing arrest warrants. When he dug deeper, James found emails between Daniel and Clara going back over a year before my accident, messages about my insurance policies, assets, everything. Clara had literally Googled how long before coma patients are declared dead, and can you inherit from someone who's still alive but incapacitated? The next morning, Clara stormed into my hospital room, looking like she'd been through a blender set. On financial disaster. Hair a mess, makeup smudged, wild-eyed look people get when their world has imploded. Mike, she said, rushing to my bed. Thank God you're awake. We need to talk. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. I heard you've been having trouble with your bank accounts, I said calmly. Her face went white, then red, then white again. It's not my fault. The bank made some error. They're saying there are irregularities with our accounts, but that's impossible because Daniel handled everything while you were sick. Where is Daniel now? I don't know, she said, genuinely panicked. He's not answering his phone, not at the house. His office says he called in sick. I've been trying to reach him all morning, but it's like he just disappeared. The FBI arrested them both that afternoon. Clara immediately broke down crying. saying it was all Daniel's idea, throwing him under the bus the second handcuffs came out. Daniel's arrest was more entertaining. He actually tried to escape by climbing out his apartment window in broad daylight while wearing a suit. He made it about 50 yards before tripping over a fire hydrant and face-planting on the sidewalk. The FBI agents just walked over and picked him up. Detective Chun said it was the most pathetic escape attempt she'd ever witnessed. They were charged with identity theft, wire fraud, bank fraud, federal loan fraud, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged documents, systematic theft documented in emails and text messages, even vacation photos from Bermuda paid for with my stolen money while I was in a coma. Clara took a plea deal, 5 years in federal prison, full restitution, and comprehensive testimony against Daniel in exchange for avoiding 10 to 15 years. She threw Daniel under the bus so hard the bus needed new tires. Daniel got 7 years without possibility of parole, plus 3 years supervised probation. The judge wasn't feeling merciful about someone who'd stolen from a disabled veteran and tried to flee federal custody. The restitution orders were beautiful. Between what they stole and court-awarded damages, they owed me over $400,000. Their assets were liquidated, wages garnished for life, any future inheritance going directly to me. They were literally financing their own prosecution through court-ordered legal fees. The VA also paid me damages for unauthorized use of my veteran status in a criminal conspiracy. James told me their case was being used as a training example for federal investigators because the combination of stupidity, arrogance, and comprehensive documentation was perfect for teaching future agents how to recognize fraud cases. 6 weeks later, I walked out of that hospital carrying everything I owned in a plastic bag, heading to a cabin upstate I'd bought with my newfound wealth. The people I'd trusted most had tried to steal my life while I was unconscious. Instead, their betrayal revealed something I hadn't known about myself. When you push a man to his absolute limit, you don't always get the broken victim you expected. Sometimes you get someone who's been quietly preparing for war. Daniel and Clara thought they were stealing from a helpless coma patient. They didn't realize they were stealing from someone who'd been documenting their every suspicious move for months, setting up safeguards, creating paper trails. The best revenge turned out to be simply letting them hang themselves with the rope I'd unknowingly provided. Now they're federal inmates serving hard time while I'm living peacefully in my mountain cabin with more money than I'd ever saved, completely free from people who never deserved my trust. Sometimes being paranoid and prepared is the difference between losing everything and gaining more than you ever had.